Okay, so getting into Canvas and managing your files, we've generated a couple, 3 or 4 items, and the easiest way to upload these is going to be to create a compressed folder, or compressed file. So this has a few more items in it, not really in sequence, but we have 2 levels that we can do this with. I will point out that if you have, 7Z, WinRare, any of the zip utilities, I can open most of those. I haven't found any that I couldn't open. So if you can get this into a compressed file, put it into Canvas, I can probably open it or figure out how to open it. So one of the things is I'm just doing a left button window pick. You can also do the Windows Control if there are certain items that you want and then certain items that you don't want. Select, deselect. Control A on the keyboard will grab everything in the folder. However you get your file selected, then you're going to right click and send to. Maybe not. Well, I have WinRare. The send to should have a compressed folder on it. So I'm not sure. I think mine just updated, so we'll have to check for those. So I have WinRare. Let's go ahead and add to archive. And like I said, rare file or zip file. We'll go ahead and hit OK. So that's interesting. I wonder if it has to do with Dropbox. Let's go back to the assignments folder, and I'll do a quick double check that it isn't something that I did. Okay, so select. Nope, I just have my Bluetooth device. All right, so I'm not sure what happened there, but send to, certain systems should have the send to compressed file or to the drive. So that one caught me. All right, coming over to the folders, I need to be in the student view to do this. So I'm going to jump over to settings, go to student view, and when you go to the assignments, then for assignment 1, so chapter 1-1 due next week, then you can submit the assignment. And when you choose the file, let's get back to, I lost my Dropbox. There we go. And we'll grab the zip file, the rare file, the whatever. Go ahead and open it. And if you have questions or wanted to make comments, you put those in. All right, so this is opposed to picking one SLDPRT file, hitting add another file, picking the next one, picking the next one. Just like you would have to do each of those individually times 9 or 10, I would have to download them times 9 or 10. So it's a lot easier for you. It's a lot easier for me to use this compressed file. When you hit submit assignment, it's oh, I'm disconnected from the internet again. It will update, and instead of saying submit assignment, it will go back to just the it will change to resubmit, and you can add multiple date stamped file uploads. All right, so you can upload as many as you want. So if you make changes or have anything going on, yep, kick me off, not connected. And we'll put those in. So one of the things that I have to look for is on the grading side is that you have uploaded those multiple files, because I kind of get in the habit of go download, and then if I'm missing something, then I kind of go back and look. So because it's not a perfect system, if I miss something or you don't get the full grade, then shoot me an email after the next cycle, and we'll make sure it gets updated. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the student view, and yep, no internet connection, so we'll kick that out. All right, so the couple of things to work from. Oh, let me get the folder back up, since I'm not able to get into this. All right, so we've been through the first couple. 3. All right, so that is 1-4. Get an idea of what the shape looks like, and then we'll go back and do the dimensions. All right, so we're setting up for an inch file. And probably next time we'll go through some of the template parameters so that we can get some things up on the screen that we'd like to see. So the one that I turn on is the origins, and that gives me the little blue dot. In addition to the reference triad, gives me a little bit more information. And since I just clicked and shot it off into space, I'll do a Control-7 to bring it back. So for quick review, Control-1 front, Control-2 back, Control-3 right, Control-4 left, Control-5 top, Control-6 bottom, Control-7 isometric. And if you have something selected, you can hit Control-8. Holding down the middle mouse button rotates. Holding down the middle mouse button and Control is a pan. Holding down Control or Alt and the middle mouse button rotates about the view plane, so whatever position that you're in. Right mouse button brings up the in context menu, and this will be what we use probably most of the time. And then the S button, which I would like you to start to use, is common commands for whatever window you're in. So I'm going to go back to the Control-1. I mentioned the donut last time, so the donut is holding down the right mouse button and dragging. Again, it's not one that I've developed the habit of using, so you will hardly ever see me use it, but there are people that are comfortable with it. If you're comfortable with it, use it. All right, we customize these a little bit. When we set up the template, we'll go through a few more with the customizing and getting that saved. So preference is front plane and sketch, but you can go, let's see, with that pre-select, I can just go to sketch. We can also highlight. Now let's see, highlight from the view, or if I go directly into sketch, it's going to ask me, and if I wanted the top or the right, I would hold down the middle mouse button, rotate into position, and whatever's highlighted is going to be the selected sketch plane. So we'll go into the front plane. My sketch, out of habit, is going to be started at the origin. Doesn't really matter if I go horizontal or vertical. I'm going to go coincident and up over. See how good I remember the geometry. And again, I'm a click dragger, so that makes it an enclosed space. With the shaded sketch contours, again, we went up to the search commands and typed in shaded, and when it showed up, I just drug it out to my command manager. So if I want to see the shaded contours, they're on. If I don't, they're off. Depends on how comfortable you are. I haven't gotten comfortable with them yet, so I'll probably be turning them off. So I missed the little notch out in the corner. So this would be a good time to talk about the trim, since I don't trim as much as I used to. So I'm just going to draw that corner segment under the trim entities. You're going to have power trim, which is a hold down the left mouse button and drag. Depends on how precise you are with the drag as to what you get. So be careful with it. Control Z, I want that back. So power trim is anything that you drag over the top of is going to disappear. The corner trim, 2 pieces. I hardly ever use corner, trim away inside, trim away outside. Most of the time it's trim closest so that I can pick, and very precisely get what I need gone. And we'll go ahead and select. So I mentioned that I don't trim very often. This is one of those cases where I know I'm not going to use that corner, but as an example, if I thought I was going to, that was a Control S, not a Control Z. If I thought I was going to use this geometry or have to modify this geometry, my preference is to split entities, which is a command that I added from the tools, sketch tools, and under the sketch tools, split entities. If you find it useful, then you can add it to the command manager or the heads-up display. If not, don't worry about it until you're ready. Split entities is kind of like the old break and erase, and a lot of commands. So I'm going to right click, hit OK, drag to where it's coincident with that endpoint, and then these two lines become construction geometry. So in the design world, I'm not reproducing something that's on print. I'm doing this out of my head. I'm seeing this picture and I'm reproducing it on the screen, and I don't know if I need that corner. Then a good strategy is to go ahead and leave it, because I can window pick, change geometry, and now I have a full corner, and the construction lines are the interior corner. And I can toggle that back and forth pretty easily as long as the geometry is there. To my way of thinking, it is easier to do this toggle in a what-if scenario than it is to draw it, erase it, draw the other one, erase it, draw it, erase it, and then finally figure out which one it is. I can toggle that back and forth and leave it, and when I'm sure that there's no corner or that I can't use those lines, then I can delete them. All right, so it's it's just kind of a shift in logic, or how you wish to approach your parts. 1.5, 3, 2, and 3.5. So picking my geometry again, my standard is ISO. So my dimensions will be on top of the line in a vertical orientation. Oh, we were going to do the sketch numeric input, and what was the other one? All right, so this sketch numeric input will allow that you put, oh, okay, there's the first one, there's the second one. No, I think it must have to be the object. Either that or I turned it on at the wrong time. Switch back over, 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch. So let's go from there. Oh, I'm clicking. All right, so click and drag. No, still not getting it. Okay, I'm not sure what I told it to do then. That one is on. Okay, we'll have to wait till I see it. Okay, 0.5 and 1 inch, and then that one was already there. So what I'm looking for is the little box that would pop up, and I could enter that value directly. But the modify is coming up and not cooperating. Okay, so 1 inch, double check, and 2 inches across the 2 inches across the flat. No, I'm not getting the sketch box, so maybe on the next sketch. Oh, and I didn't look at the thickness, so 1.125. We'll go with the features, extrude boss base, 1.125. Okay, so it's not a requirement that I put the holes into the sketch geometry. We can do it as a separate cut. All right, but pretty much with the shaded geometry, let's go back in and edit the sketch. When I turn the shade on, notice that we put in the circles. There's the sketch input. So maybe it wasn't going to be active in that sketch. All right, so what the sketch input is doing, until I let go of that circle, I can put in a value and hit enter, and it's going to go to that value. So kind of like entering the parameters that we got a dimension, it is the correct size, but there are no relations to it. It just allowed us to put in that value and get it to that size. So now I got to figure out what it was. 1/2 inch holes. All right, so the 2 1/2 inch holes. We'll stay with the 1 inch, 0.75 by 1. All right, so we'll go 1. And it's still not asking me on the linear dimensions, but it did ask me on the diameter. So that was the 1 inch. All right, and then 0.75, 0.75, and 1.75, 1.25. All right, so position, or sorry, size, then position. Whoops, got the 90 degree. We haven't talked about angles yet, but we will. So 5. And then we need one more. So we talked a little bit about Control C and Control V. If I was still drawing circles or in the circle command, then I would just keep drawing circles. I can also pick up that hole size, pick a new location, Control V, and it will be the same size circle, so 0.5. And I'm putting a dimension on this one independent for a reason, 1.75 and 1.25. All right, so notice that I'm not being overly careful about positioning my dimensions. They're kind of a mess. And then notice also that the shading, that as I went from a region, a single region, to having nested, all right, so an enclosed region within that region, then it becomes a darker gray. If we were to go with another region, okay, so let's go 0.25 if I do the numeric input, because I'm not going to keep this anyway. We'll go back to select. That one's a little bit darker, that one's a little bit lighter, that one's a little bit lighter. So now I have a doubly nested. So this is my first nest, this is my second nest. The other thing would be, do they intersect? All right, so in this case, regions that intersect, I have the variations in colors. And this will require the selection under the boss extrude at the very bottom, contour and region. I will have to pick the geometry that I want because I have overlapping, I have these doubly nested geometries. Okay, so that can go away, that can go away. And because this geometry was doesn't have any errors or shouldn't have any errors, it should rebuild okay. So the last thing is, if I decide that I really want to make those equal, we're looking at that overdefined condition or an unsolvable condition. So in this case, it's showing up in yellow. It's telling me that the items conflict. One of these has to have priority. Are these going to be equal, or are they going to have individual dimensions? So if I want those to be equal, I have the choice of looking over here and saying that dimension can be driven. That will get it there. It says I can no longer edit, and this line, this extension line, will be quite a bit lighter, almost perceptibly lighter, that it is not going to participate in setting the dimension. The darker extension line is the one having priority. The other option is I don't need it, delete it. Once it's out of the way, then I'm only going to look for that dimension. I'm only going to look for the equal relation and still remain fully defined on the status bar. Once we accept it, that's going to be our geometry, that's going to be our part. Yes?
Question on those two. I mean, it looks pretty clear that those are the same, and we know you copied it. What if you have a drawing where they're similar, but you're not sure they're the same, but only one is dimension? Compared to you go to, well, the other one's really big, so that can't be right.
And if there isn't a note that says 2 holes, 3 holes, or something, then it's a best guess. You as the designer get to make the choice, and I'm not going to argue with you. All right. Now, on the responsibility that comes with that, me not arguing with you, is that I also have the expectation that when it gets to the assembly, when it gets to the drawing, you will review, you will observe what's going on in the assembly, and you'll kind of verify that. Keep it in the back of your mind that, hey, there was a problem with this part. Is it going to play out, or do I need to make an adjustment? If it needs to be much bigger, it should be obvious that whatever fastener, whatever object goes through there needs to be quite a bit bigger. You got a major interference. If it's quite a bit smaller, not so much. Unless it's drastically smaller, you may not be able to see that, wow, there's a lot more clearance in there than I need. And it's part of going through that diagnostics, and we pretty much have those multiple iterations so that we can catch those things. The reality is that we're going to catch a lot of it, but something's going to slip through. So through every iteration, through every set of eyes that looks at this, the critical viewpoint is, there might have been an issue. Does this fit? How is it going to go together? Those are the questions that you're constantly reviewing and asking yourself as you're going through this process. If this is something that I'm reverse engineering, that I'm sitting there with a pair of calipers, I couldn't find a drawing, I couldn't find the product somewhere online, it's broke, I need to make another one, I can't get one, then I'm going to reverse engineer it. I'm going to take those measurements and I'm going to take my best guess, thinking that whoever manufactured, whoever did the original design is probably going to state a fractional or is going to state a nominal metric and not go too far out into the out into the design to make it non-functional, or try to make it as functional as possible. So in that case, where there is a question mark, one of the reasons why I will put these items in the not marked for drawing category, and the reason that they're showing up in purple, I'll try and find a spot here. Oh, well, I guess that was moving it. Let's go ahead and get, maybe not. All right, so I backed out of it too far. So in this case, I want the, I'm going to get rid of those relations. Maybe there is this is 0.5, that one could be 7/16, or it could be 9/16. So a little bit the other side, one way or the other. We're not sure. If it wasn't called out or we didn't get a good view on it, I'll go ahead and delete that one. And then this doesn't create a overdefined or conflicting condition because they're both the same. But what I will do then is switch. I will highlight both of those and create a mark for drawing. So these two go to black. And the question is then on this item, we can go down into its notes and say verify size. So whenever I open up that sketch, whenever I open up or I insert into the drawing view, the marked for drawing items, these two will show up. This one I'm assuming to be correct. This one I need to verify. And I can use that as a downstream data. Hey, I seem to remember something. I've done 30 parts since then, and I put together a couple of assemblies. It's a little fuzzy. If I leave myself the trail of breadcrumbs, then I at least have a chance of picking it up when it gets to the assembly. And then the other thing would be to use the inspection or the parentheses to kind of denote those or call them out in some way. So pretty much the parentheses are reference dimension. That means that they're duplicate somewhere else. And the inspection, the obround around the geometry, is pay attention to me, something's going on here. Okay, so we use that as our group, and this was 1-4. All right, so that was the logo. Oh, I went back to downloads. Let me get that back in my Dropbox. Pick up my naming convention since forgot. There we go. Okay, so that was the quick one. Let's okay, the block with the hole in it. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that one real quick. I was gonna bypass it, but we'll revisit the midpoint relation. So front, and I'm not overly concerned with the dimension. All right, so as I'm dragging, now I remember it's not when I'm applying the dimension. So I apologize for the sketch input. That one throws me because again, it's not one that I use regularly. But as I'm dragging, as long as I have this geometry in drag, I'm left click, hold down. I can say that is 2 inches, enter. It will shift to the next one, 2 inches, enter, and let go. So the geometry is 2 inch by 2 inch. But again, that little bit of extra effort, I don't know that it overcomes, because I'm still going to have to put in the 2 inch or the 2 inch and the make equal. Oh, they got equal. So I didn't know it would do that. So I learned something tonight. So when I made this one 2" and it didn't put in the value, it forced those to be equal, or it inferred an equal relation. So that's interesting. All right, so, and we're 80 millimeters. So 80 by 80 by 40, 20 millimeters, 10 millimeters thick. All right, so I'm going to switch over to millimeters, grams, and seconds. It kicks me out of the sketch. I need to get back into the sketch. I can right-click, edit sketch. I can right-click on one of the pieces of geometry, edit sketch. I can highlight one of the pieces of geometry and click on the sketch. That will take me back into the sketch. Notice that my units have changed. I double-click, go to 80 millimeters, a little over 3 inches. And let's go ahead and put the hole in. So going to and from, we have the inferences for the endpoints. We'll go back and pick up the inference for the midpoint of the construction line. And I didn't put it in because, well, still not quite a habit. Okay, so yeah, 20, 40, thickness of 10. All right. So what that midpoint does, and to a certain extent, it doesn't matter if I were to go from midpoint to midpoint and use that midpoint, or put another construction line midpoint to midpoint and use the intersection. They're going to do basically the same thing. What I've found, or to be my preference, is to go corner to corner. That if this geometry gets modified or changed, it will probably be midway on that line and you will lose that midpoint relation. Occasionally you will lose the coincidence to the endpoint going to the corner, but it's more likely that this geometry will go away in some fashion. So I would still recommend the corner to corner over the intersection or the vertical horizontal. Again, preference. Try it, see what plays out. As you go through projects and you are making adjustments and making changes, you'll either, yeah, this is working for me, I'm going to keep it in my toolbox, or no, I need to kick it out, do something different. Go back in, do the extrude boss base, 10 millimeters, and save. So even a simple box with a hole in it, we're paying attention to those relations. We're looking at and making decisions. So there's this constant stream of small decisions going through and building those out. All right, so I need one that has, well, a little more geometry. So let's do the inferences because I want to hit those first. All right, so we did the relations last week, and I'll go into the front plane. And so we talked a little bit about inference lines. Well, as your sketches are becoming more complicated, there's more geometry for there to be inferences too. So let's just sketch, let's go horizontal. And the sketch input is kind of annoying me, so that has to go off. And we'll put one at an angle, one up, one over. Notice the vertical. I start coming back this way. Those little dash lines are telling me that it's going to be parallel. I zoom out a little bit and I come up. That tells me that it's going to be perpendicular. So we didn't spend a lot of time with parallel and perpendicular, but they are the infamous inferred relations that will probably mess you up when you start putting the dimensions in. Because very quickly I have a perpendicular. It's perpendicular to the previous line. Probably not going to pick up parallel now. Okay, picked up parallel. We go back over and put in the geometry. Shaded tells me that I have an enclosed region, but then I go to start putting angles on this. And if I go, so let's see. I am set up to automatically go to a driven dimension, so it's not even going to bark at me. So that's a plus and a minus in that I can see the dimension, but it's not going to stop me each time that I make a change. So the angle that I want is going to be this one. So let's go 40 degrees. Well, let's make it a little more dramatic, 15 degrees. And as I shift, this parallel goes into effect, this perpendicular goes into effect, and the geometry shifts as I make the shift in dimensions. As we drag things around, these are not going to move independently because those relations were inferred. All right, so I can highlight one and, oh, did I intend for there to be a parallel? Well, yes and no. Did I intend for there to be a perpendicular? No. So one of the tools that we have that, if this sketch is pretty complicated and you go back and you turn on the sketch relations or you have your sketch relations on, there's a lot of things happening there and I may not be able to pick out parallel and parallel, perpendicular and perpendicular. All right, if there's a lot of geometry in place. So that being the case, we'll go to display delete relations, all in this sketch. And if I do not expect to see a perpendicular and a parallel, those would be two that I could delete. And be careful with the delete alls. Delete all is just what it says, take everything away. There is the angle, and notice that it is in gray as a overdefined or a driven dimension. All right, so it automatically went to driven rather than overdefining my sketch because I told it to. So that one can go away as well. Now when we accept and I start to drag, those items will move independent. As things are changing and invert and do all of the other fun stuff, I'm not worried about them making those changes because I have enough geometry. I can put the dimensions back in to control those objects, control those elements of the sketch. Okay, so watch for the inferred. And again, most of these, if you're cruising right along, are going to pop up for a split second. And if you're not watching the little yellow boxes and catching that it inferred a perpendicular, inferred a parallel, you're probably not going to catch it until you start putting dimensions on and it gives you those errors and creates those problems. All right. So, looking at 1.6, this is kind of the first one that jumps out at me at having a little bit of symmetry, except for the steps. So never mind. It sounded good, but maybe we can use that as a back through. That one's going to be chancy to mirror it and then realize. So let's see what it does. Okay, so with symmetry, anytime you can mirror across a center line, I'm going to recommend that you do it. In this case, we're going to give it a try. See if I can paint myself into a really good corner here. When I put in a center line or an axis of symmetry, I'm going to go vertical, for construction, infinite length. Because I picked center line, for construction is automatically selected. Put that in place. We'll make the bottom at the midpoint, up, over, back. Oh, and then that was an arm in the middle. And those are still on, so they've got to go. Okay, so up, over, back. Yeah, okay. And one more to the center line. Okay. So at this point, I can go directly into mirror entities, in which case I will select the entities to mirror. I'm selecting from left to right. Top and bottom's irrelevant, doesn't matter. I go left to right, everything inside the window. If I go right to left, then it's going to be everything crossing the window, so in that case, including the center line. I want to go mirror about and select so that it gives me the opposite. Be careful about unchecking copy because you lose any of the relations that were there or that were placed, and you end up with whatever is over here undefined. So my recommendation is if you are making a left and a right part and you realize that you drew the left and you really needed the right, then you will go ahead and mirror this, leave all of the geometry, and switch this to construction geometry. Leave it. It'll save you going back in the dimensions, going back into the geometry, and the flipping right to left is just a natural progression. Draw the object line between the two endpoints so that it can finish out. Okay, so that's one method. If I just go left to right and select everything, there's only one center line. So the rule is if there's one center line, it must be the axis of symmetry. Give me an immediate mirror. And then the last one that I'm not overly fond of, and I think it's because I have to think too hard when I'm using it, Sketch Tools, Mirror Dynamic Mirror. And it's one of those, you'll love it or you'll hate it. When Dynamic Mirror is on, let's see, select a sketch line or linear model. Let's see, was that the line? Oh, I'm not getting the parallel. Yeah, I hope they didn't change the logic on that one, because that one was... Okay, and then whatever you draw. Okay, so that went back to mirror. It didn't... What it was supposed to do, or what I was expecting it to do, was to draw the parallel lines so that anything you draw on this side gets created on the opposite side. So another one I'm going to have to go back and check for 2017. So that says dynamic mirror. Oh, okay, my logic, my bad. All right, we'll try again. Another one of those, I don't use it often enough, and it's sneaking up on me. So this is my axis that I'm going to mirror around. If it takes it, anything I draw on the one side, I get on the other, until I run out of things that I want to draw. Okay, and then I have to go find dynamic mirror again. And that's probably the one that I don't like the most, is I have to go turn it off. All right, so we'll highlight all those, hit delete, make them go away. So my preference is that, I kind of did this one quick, but I really want to look at the relations more than dimensions. Usually I would draw the half, I would get it fully defined, and when I make the mirror, the other half will be fully defined as well. I'm done. So on this, I'm interested in my endpoint, symmetric. I'm interested in the endpoint that's symmetric. And then that has no relation, so we'll go horizontal. And I can drop it just a little bit. Everything else, okay, well, since that one kicked out, maybe not everything, but everything else we can run through as our geometry. So we're at 140 millimeters. I'm still in inch, pounds, and seconds. Keep in mind that if you are in the middle, you have a... All right, so that's not the one that I wanted. When you have an endpoint and a line, it will give you a projection arrow. So if we had an angle, then I would be able to project off of those arrows based on angle or geometry that I'm creating. So I think it was 180 millimeters, 180 mm. We'll switch it 2 inches. So if I'm in the middle of the command when I realize, then I can go back, know that it's going to kick me out, right click, edit sketch, and now I'm in the metric sketch. 140, 60, 50, okay, too many numbers. Okay, go back for the next batch. Overall was 110, 180 to the bottom. Nope. Now I blinked. 110 and 80. I added them. So don't like the dimension, go back, change it. updates. Let's see, because we're symmetrical, or I made the assumption it was symmetrical, I didn't really check. 50, 40, and then 20 on the outside. So let's see, since those weren't called out. Okay, so 20, working backwards, 20, 120 minus 90, still 30. So let's see, which ones do I want? All right, we'll go 20 and 40 and see if that does it. Okay, so because I lost the symmetry, okay, that was still showing symmetric that way. So that means one of two things. It can either move. Again, I made a conscious decision to delete those symmetries, so I'm having to put back in the horizontal and vertical. All right, so even though it shows vertical, it is not an inferred, it has not been implied. So I'm going to highlight and set to vertical. That will take care of my definition. So I can play these games and I can make choices with the relations, but I have to be prepared for the consequence of going back through and setting them up, making them follow the path. All right, so 45 either side. Oh, what was the diameter? 20 millimeters. Okay, so mirroring the circle, I'm going to do the select, control, select. Select the circle, control, select the center line, mirror entity. I want these to be on the same plane, so the center points are horizontal. And then select, control, select, we'll make those equal. Okay, so it gave me the linear dimension, that was 45. And then our diameter was 20. And I missed the height, and also 20. Okay, so everything goes fully defined, and then any of these that I would want to check, I don't think that was the dimension that I got, but we're saying 25 from the side, 40, 120 to the outside. Oh, man, I was really stuck on 180 this time. All right, so in the process, you should be able to say this is a little bit bigger, this is a little bit smaller, and go catch the my number mistakes. All right, so that looks good. The trouble that I had going through with the vertical, the horizontal, the vertical, taking the two symmetry relations out, I don't know if that was worth it, but it's a good example of how to manipulate and work back through some of the relations. So paying attention to those relations, what's being inferred, going through the process. At some point, they will become part of your workflow where they're popping up, they're disappearing, and you're just kind of aware of them in the background. But then when they do create the problem, you get the inference, and not on a simple sketch. As you get more in depth, you're making more angles, you're making more geometry. Slow down a little bit when you're picking up the angles and try to pay attention when it's getting inference, and the solution is to move it a little bit away from parallel, move it a little bit away from perpendicular, so that it doesn't automatically put that inference in. All right, we'll call that good for tonight, and I will take questions in lab.